health friends. Welcome to another episode. I am so excited to have both Megan Becker and Aubrey Golbek on the show today because I feel like this is like the original crew. So, Aubrey and I started Joyful Health Collective back in 2020. She is a dietitian. She's the author of Grace, Food, and Everything in Between. She now is offering one-on-one nutrition counseling in person at the Movement Cube Chiropractic and Rehab in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She homeschools her 4 kids and she homesteads. She loves cooking from scratch. I can attest to her good cooking as well. And so we get to kind of move into these different spaces. And I'm gonna say a little bit more of what she's getting into with the new type of testing. But first of all, Aubrey, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. So excited.
Yeah, me too. And then Megan, I think you were, I don't know, maybe one of the first people to join the course, which we just created the Joyful Health course and it became the Joyful Health Collective. And so I'm just so thankful that we've kind of been able to walk with one another throughout this journey. It's been 4 years now, which is kind of hard to believe, but I'm so thankful to see where you are and how you've grown as a person, as a dietitian. If you don't know Megan, she facilitates a virtual community. It's called Grace Rooted Gals, where like-minded Christian women gather to embrace grace, flourish in faith, and thrive in their health journey and life. So what we will be talking about today is some functional testing to help to nourish ourselves better. So if you have been walking with us through Joyful Health, or maybe you're just started to get into intuitive eating or starting to maybe get into like Principle 10, the gentle nutrition side of things, we are going to be talking more about how to test for the nutritional side of your health with a grace foundation because as Aubrey is saying before, as we were talking through, if you listen to the previous episode with Caroline Dooner and her story, we can easily go down the rabbit trail with some of these kinds of tests. So Megan, I am going to start with you. First of all, welcome. Thank you so much for taking your time to talk with us today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited for this conversation.
Me too. Okay, so Megan, I think I probably heard from you first about hair mineral testing in particular. Why did you decide to get into this type of testing for your clients, and like why this specific kind of testing? I know you're getting into some different kinds, but just kind of talk about a little bit about hair. Let's see, hair tissue mineral analysis. Is that right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so great question. I think the hair tissue mineral analysis test, we'll probably call it HTMA for short,
Yes.
is the main functional lab test that you'll hear us talking about today. And honestly, it's my favorite. And I think a lot of other dietitians and functional health providers would agree with that. Partially because it's considerably affordable for a functional lab test compared to some of the other tests. And also, it gives us just such a big, broad, whole picture of what's going on, both with your individual minerals and then all of the different ratios can give us a lot of different indicators as well, which we'll dive into a little bit more specifically. But honestly, this is a test that I found a couple years ago in my own health journey when I maybe wasn't getting answers to symptoms or with kind of conventional medicine, blood, like more like just blood tests that are more screeners, just wasn't getting answers. And the HTMA test, among other functional tests, but mostly this one, really helped to validate some symptoms that I had going on and helped me to then come up with a targeted approach that I was comfortable with to replenish my minerals, because our minerals are really so foundational and are vital enzyme cofactors to all the different functions and processes of our bodies, which we can kind of dive into and nerd out on a little bit. But yeah, they are super important. And we, Aubrey and I can probably both agree that as dietitians, we're not trained in this test. We were not really trained in a functional health approach. I think there's a lot of value in our training as dietitians, but I think it's really started to fill this gap in healthcare, if you will, and caring for our patients and our clients' health. That has really just been awesome. And yeah, it really started with my own health journey, like I mentioned.
Yeah, and I think that's where you convinced me to. So, just a heads up, I just bought this package from Megan when she sent the email, and I was like, "Oh, I think I'm ready to jump into another functional test because I did a whole protocol last year, 4 months worth of supplements, and it was very expensive. I don't feel like I felt better. And better meaning like I struggle with headaches and fatigue. I have hypothyroidism. And so, like things were promised of like, you're going to feel better after this. I didn't change my diet much because, going through intuitive eating, it's like I've done the restrictive elimination stuff. I don't want to do that. I know it's not going to be sustainable and I want something that is sustainable. And so, like you talked about, this feels very affordable. I'm going to talk a little bit more about my experience with getting that sample, and I'm a little embarrassed about it, but we'll bring that in a little bit later. So Aubrey, tell us why you got involved in this because y'all kind of did this separately, and it was like, oh, actually, I'm getting into this hair mineral testing analysis. Is that right?
HTMA.
HTMA. There we go. Okay.
Mhm, mhm.
How did you
You'll get used to it
start
by the end
getting
of
into
this
this?
conversation. Yeah.
That's right.
Honestly, it was because of some challenges we were having with my kiddos, and I have a local friend here. Her name's Ashley Smith, in Tulsa, and we connected over faith-based intuitive eating like years ago, like when I first, 2017, and we've been friends ever since. And she started to do some functional testing, and she told me I had kind of heard about HTMA just because, if you're a dietitian and you're on Instagram, you see stuff. She had told me I should consider it for my child. So funny enough, I never did it for my kid. I just that was the seed that was planted. And then I started researching it and listening to, what is her name? Amanda Montoya. Her name's Hormone Healing RD. Like that's her, where you can find her, and her podcast is Are You Menstrual? And I started learning a lot from her, and I really like her approach. I recommend her listening to her podcast too if y'all are intrigued by this, because she takes kind of a balanced approach to functional testing. And so, anyways, point being, I did her course. I learned up. I did my own testing, and I did my testing for a loved one who was struggling with some hormonal imbalance. I was like, I just really feel like you're supposed to do this. And I loved it because, like you've already said, it was affordable. It's like $55 to $65 depending on for the actual test itself. I mean, to get it interpreted, it may be more depending on, if you're doing that through a practitioner, but that is so cheap compared to, I mean, you can't even get just an iodine test for it's like $100. So, and the amount of information that it gave. And then finally, it really fit within this framework that I believe in so much, which is that our foundations are the most important, and that really stress and undernourishment is at the root of a lot of our issues. And so the HTMA shows us where we're depleted, what our individual stress response is as far as what minerals we burn through in our body, and even what stage of stress we're in. And then it can say even more, like Megan alluded to, with the different ratios, we can kind of look at different systems and see, oh, you're having these symptoms here. Here's a way that we can address that. And you don't have to know the root cause per se of everything to start taking action. Sometimes, and maybe we're going to talk about this, sometimes in functional medicine, we can get so obsessed with well, what was the root cause? Why? Sounds like our faith too sometimes when we get to that point of why?
Yeah.
And really that's not helpful to me. I feel like if we can actually take a step to correct it and to move forward, that's the most beneficial thing. And that's what I feel like this test allows us to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. So what I hear you both saying is that it's affordable. It gives a really helpful amount of information. And I think something that I was also considering is, okay, once you get that information, are you going to tell me to take some really expensive type of supplement? And Aubrey, I remember you saying like, well, it could be something as simple as putting a dash of salt in your water or taking some trace mineral drops, which you can buy on Amazon. And so it was like, okay, like this feels normal. It feels like something that everyone can do because I don't like health solutions that are out of reach and inaccessible and unrealistic for the general population. It's like we don't want to ever push any type of health behaviors that don't make sense for the poor, the rich, like the young, the old, so it's like we never want to have this privileged type of health. That doesn't make sense with the gospel. The gospel is for everybody. So shouldn't we be talking about health in the way that's accessible for everybody as well? I think that's probably a different conversation, but I think that was really helpful for me because I had just been through a very expensive protocol that didn't feel like it worked. And I also didn't know what to do with that information. So I think we've kind of covered this question of what do you believe these tests have to offer that others don't? What would you say are the dangers with getting more information about our health? Because there's so many kinds of tests that we can get, even especially with genetic testing too. What are the dangers of getting more information in general? Megan, we'll start with you.
Okay. Yeah, I think that we can kind of become too hypervigilant, right? So overly focusing on the data and kind of obsessing about that rather than zooming out and thinking about the whole picture, right? Because we are holistic beings, right? Our health is physical, mental, emotional, and
Mhm.
spiritual. And it's so important to keep that in mind. And I love what Aubrey said about how we've both found that this test can fit into this framework-based approach that her and I have both had and just bonded over through the years, and Joyful Health really aligns with, which truly, intuitive eating in and of itself is a framework, right? So it's teaching us tools and skills to tune inward and into the wisdom of our bodies. And instead of being informed by maybe a shame-based diet culture negative. So
Mhm.
I think a potential danger is the hypervigilance that can happen, but it's really important when I'm working with my clients to understand the data of their tests to be emphasizing the foundations, right? The stress management, the eating adequately and consistently, and that those will always matter most. And yes, there's these little tweaks we can do, like adding in minerals, and we can start small and go gradual, because healing is
Mhm.
truly usually a process and takes time for everyone, and people are open to different things. But one of my mentors actually said to me, which was a welcomed reminder, and I like to kind of reshare it, but she said to stay curious and don't become hyper vigilant in the healing journey. So stay
Mhm.
curious with what your symptoms are indicating to you, indicating, but also be compassionate with yourself and remember that healing is hard work, and some days it's just being really gentle with yourself, and some seasons you might have more capacity to add in more or do more, but it's never helpful when we're adding in judgment and shame. I see that as kind of the biggest sabotagers, as
Mhm.
you will, in just a healing and health journey overall. So, yeah, I think being cautious to not be hypervigilant and just kind of focusing on the whole picture and caring for yourself holistically.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, if the people who are listening to this are interested in health and they want to be healthy and they want to be fit so that they can do what God has called them to do. But there is a danger to that. There is a danger to, yeah, zoning in on something that you can only see. I'm always reminded of this illustration where someone is showing a whiteboard and they have like a speck of a marker on the board and they'll ask the audience, what do you see on the board? And people will say, I see a dot over on the left side. And they're like, okay, the answer is you see a whiteboard. You know, it's like we can see like this tiny little thing and miss the huge big picture of like, oh, actually there's a lot of space for grace and peace and and so Aubrey, I'm curious to hear, do you agree? Do you have anything to add?
Oh, first of all, I love that. Stay curious and don't be hypervigilant. I think one thing I would add, especially with the HTMA testing, is that just the tendency, I caution anyone that I walk through their results with them, like, hey, these are results. I don't want you to be discouraged and think like this is a report card on, your health and how you've been doing. This is really honestly what's great about the HTMA is it's sort of an in-between point. Like we go to the doctor when things are really, really terrible, a lot of us, right? And the only time that the labs that they draw, the CBC and whatever they're doing flag is when it's pretty bad, right? It's like when it's already extreme. And so the HTMA can kind of give us like what's the direction we're going right now and what's going on over the last 3 months. And also to know, like, if you don't have these symptoms that we're saying, hey, this ratio can sometimes mean this is going on, but you're not experiencing that. Great. You're not experiencing that. It's not a diagnosis or a sentence. It's just, like it can shed light on what is going on, and it gives us ideas of where we can take those small steps for change or work on our foundations more. So that's just what I would add specifically for that test.
Yeah, that is very helpful. So it provides information, but it's not overwhelming. It's not condemning. Whereas we feel like, oh no, I am super sick and that creates more stress. So I love what you're both saying about like we're going to start small, we're going to take the next step, and I also love that you're both walking people through their results too, and I highly trust you. I'm excited to go through my results with you, Megan, but also am a little bit nervous of like, what is this going to say about who I am? And I think, as Christians, we have to remember, okay, our health is not our identity. The way that we pursue health is not our identity. This is information. This is feedback. And, and we get to work in relationship with one another. So what would you say to the woman or man who is wondering like, hey, will this work for me? Or is it kind of just another trend? Because people who probably will invest in this have tried a lot of other testing before. So what would you say to that person about HTMA in particular? And we'll kind of go in our same order. So Megan, what would you say?
Sorry, I didn't want to keep taking the lead, but
Yeah.
I would just say definitely if you feel like you're not getting answers, I do see the HTMA often as kind of this missing piece of the puzzle. And part of that is just to kind of back up again, is that it's giving us information at the cellular level, right? So blood work is very valuable, but it's really like such a one-time snapshot, whereas your hair tissue mineral analysis can give us like a 3 to 4 month look back of your mineral levels. And then again, yeah, those ratios and different things give us lots of different insight that we can really deep dive into. But my favorite thing working with clients is hearing that they feel validated in their symptoms and then they feel these like confident about these small steps that they can now take towards healing and replenishing and rebalancing. And I think one good example of that, Kasey, you had mentioned thyroid health, but your calcium and potassium ratio is your thyroid ratio. And if it's high, just a quick example from HTMA, it can indicate that your thyroid is sluggish, and this can correlate with some hypothyroid symptoms. So if you've had blood work done that shows that your thyroid is fine, right? Maybe a screener, but you're still struggling with hypothyroid symptoms, this can be the reason why. And so you might actually have plenty of thyroid hormone in your blood. So again, those blood labs and screeners are showing up normal, but it's not able to get into your cells. So that cellular level where it's actually utilized. So to balance this out, to improve thyroid health and symptoms, we want to support the body here, just for this example, and properly utilizing calcium is usually one big step here. Because when the bio unavailable calcium, we call it, it's just calcium that's not really able to be readily used. When that's present, it's going to decrease your cells uptaking that in the body, making it difficult for that thyroid hormone to get into the cell. So that might have just blown your mind right there, but such valuable insight that we can get. And again, coming back to how the person is presenting. So we're always wanting to treat the whole person, because I've seen this data correlate and really validate for multiple clients symptoms that they're having that maybe they've dismissed for a long time or haven't gotten answers for, such as having chronic cold hands and feet, or dry skin, like itchy feet, or skin that's peeling on the feet, right? And again, you're getting your blood screeners done and they're all coming back normal. So I think this can, if I would just really encourage you to keep asking questions, to maybe consider an HTMA. If you're having symptoms and you're not getting answers, be your own advocate, right? You might be working with a health professional that doesn't have the tool to get you those answers, but I'd encourage you to consider something else.
Yeah, that's really helpful to talk about blood test versus the hair tissue mineral test. And I'm kind of curious too, and Aubrey, maybe you can answer this or bounce it back to Megan too, of what's different about the hair cells versus saliva testing versus, it sounds like blood testing, it's literally testing what's in your bloodstream. But is it that the hair testing is that why it's testing the actual cell from your hair? And when I did it, it was get as close to your scalp as possible. And okay, I'll tell you the story. So Megan, I get the packet that you gave me, which she sent it super fast. I was like, oh, it's already here. And then I wasn't super sure how to work the hair scale. And I was like, I'm gonna look up a YouTube video. And so maybe you put that in there. I don't know. I looked up a YouTube video and had a person taking a small piece of their hair. And so I was talking on the phone to a friend while I was doing it because I'd already looked up the video. I knew what to do. And so I put my hair half back and then I grab I don't know, I'll just kind of show you maybe it was it was probably this much of it.
That's a lot.
Well, I was it looks like that's about how much they used.
It's that much. It's probably.
What? Okay, maybe I'm too embarrassed to show you a picture. Maybe I can text you, but I'm not going to show the whole world on the internet. But I put my hair half up and I was like, you have to get it really close to the scalp, or it's not going to work. And so with these kinds of tests, I'm like, we have to get this right. And so he's cutting it and it's kind of hurting. He's like, you said to get it close. And so cutting it really and then he looks back and you don't ever want to hear that from a hairdresser, a doctor, anybody. And I'm like, what is it? He's like, this is a lot of hair. I think you chose way too much hair. I'm like, what do you just show me? He's like, I'm gonna take a picture. And he took the picture, didn't show me first, sent it straight to my friend who's on the phone on speaker, and she goes, I think I'm gonna throw up.
So just to clarify, I do have a 1-minute video, Kasey, that I should have made sure.
Well, I should have watched your video.
Because you should do 4 to 5 really small pieces kind of scattered throughout. I always say your ponytail region. So the back of your head.
So I basically messed up the whole thing is what you're saying.
Yes. And I've done mine, I think 4 or 5 times now, in the past 3 years or so. And I can usually feel where I've cut for a week or two, and then I can't even find it. I've tried to find it after a month to just recut that same area, the new growth, but it blends right back in. So some people are definitely scared to do the test because they're like, I don't want to have to cut off half of my hair. You don't.
Yeah. Well,
unless you're Kasey.
Just learn from my mistake and watch Megan's video instead of YouTubing somebody else's video.
Yeah, HTMA bloopers reel would be pretty funny though.
No.
I could probably contribute to that.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
That's
So
amazing.
I already sent it off, so I
It should
don't
still
know.
be
The more
okay.
the better, yeah.
Yeah.
It was
It
a
should
lot.
still be
I mean, it was
okay.
a lot of
It's
hair, but
just
it's only in one
bad
spot.
for you.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to the hairdresser next week, and she's probably going to
Shave it. Just
chop.
buzz it.
That's what Maddox said. He said, I think you just need to shave off all your hair at this point.
Buzz.
Oh my
We're
gosh,
scaring all the listeners. Yeah, we're like,
for
guys,
real.
this is what I tell like everyone. I'm like, you don't have to take that much hair. Like, don't be freaked out. And then now they're gonna listen to this podcast and be like, well, no,
No, this is what
you know.
what not to do.
Yes, it's true. It's true.
And yeah, but I am also not concerned about hair. I'm like, hair grows back,
Yeah.
and it's also in a spot, even when it does grow back, it's going to go straight, into my ponytail. So,
You'll be good.
we will link all of Megan's information too, and make sure
Mhm.
you do it right. So,
Mhm.
okay, let's get back on track.
Yeah.
So Aubrey, in
You're
your
asking.
experience, like how do you know that? How does someone know that it will work for them? Like
Um,
when you were digging into it, like, will it give me the answers? Will it give this person the
yeah.
answers?
I think Megan answered that really well in the fact that, like, if nothing else, like, if you feel like you're going to your PCP and they're like, thyroid's a great example too, because half the time they won't even do the full panel and their reference ranges that they use are, like, according to research, not actually the best reference ranges. And so things will just like go under the radar. So
Mhm.
I would say for sure, if that's you, or if you're just feeling like, I don't know, if you just feel like I'm doing the foundations, and I just don't know where to start, but I don't want to spend a ton of money on supplements that I have no idea if they're actually what I need. It's like you can buy an HTMA for pretty much the cost of most supplements. So
Mm.
instead of like buying, random supplements and like throwing money at those, I would do this. And no, maybe it's not going to fix everything 100%. Like, you have to, we are complicated people with, even when we have the right recommendations, we can't always put them into practice right away, but it's going to give you a step to move forward.
Mhm.
And it's going to give you that information that you need, or even just like, yeah, a place to look into areas of where you need to care for yourself. And I know, Kasey, you talked about how is this different than like a saliva test or a blood test. And Megan sort of alluded to the fact that a blood test is usually just like a moment in time, right? Unless it's like a hemoglobin A1C for blood sugar that looks at. We love that test as dietitians because we get to see 3 months of blood sugar balance. That's why we love the hair test, right? We get to see 3 to 4 months. And it's something could be in your bloodstream, but if you don't have the cofactors to get it into your cell, then it's not doing you any benefits. It could be just being filtered right back out. It could be being stored toxically in your liver. And if it's not getting into your cells the way it's supposed to be, then it's not doing you any benefit. You could be taking tons of supplements, but you're not, it's not getting in there. And that's why we love the HTMA, because again, if the minerals are getting pushed into your hair cells, we know it's getting into your cells, and not just floating around in the bloodstream and not doing what it's supposed to do. So does that answer kind of why that's different than some of the other tests?
Yeah, for sure. And I know that a lot of this is scientific speak, but also, for the average Joe who is just
Yeah.
grabbing a multivitamin, it's
Mhm.
it's good to know of, am I throwing my money away with this multivitamin? And if you think about adding that up over time, over a year's worth of just buying an over-the-counter supplement, it's like, well, we still want to be good stewards of our money, and like, is this
Mhm.
working? So I think it sounds like this can just help to guide us in what kind of supplements actually do you need, and
Mhm.
so that we're not wasting money going forward, and then we're getting things that are targeted for us. Yeah, and it's a huge bummer to think about, well, I've been taking vitamin D, but oh, actually I'm not processing it. So, and like,
Yeah.
what do I do with that? And so I know that we've had a conversation about that as well. But those are things that you don't know until you know. And our average primary care doctor is probably not going to recommend that kind of testing. So I think that is really helpful to know that it's available.
There was one thing I wanted to add because you'd kind of
Mhm.
alluded to it, and talking about like other tests. This is kind of taking it back, but you mentioned genetic tests, which I just want to say a word to because I've had several people come to me and be like, "What should I do? Should I want to like?" They like wanted to throw money. They wanted to throw money at a test, like because they're interested in their health, and that's
Yeah.
fine. And they were asking me about genetic tests, like, "Oh, should I take this to find out if I have the MTHFR?" I don't ever know if I say that correctly. Gene, whatever. Should I spend $800 on this test? And I would vehemently say no. Like I would say do the other one for most every person because a genetic test, if it's looking at your genes, you cannot change your DNA. Like you're not going to change your DNA. You can change how those things are expressed like with environmental things. So why stress yourself out? This is
Mhm.
just the functional labs in general. If you're not going to be able to do, you need to think, what am I going to do with this information?
Yeah.
Is it going to give me a bunch of supplements that I can't afford? Probably just don't do it because it's just going to give you, information that's going to stress you out that you can't do anything with.
Yeah.
Or is it going to tell me about some disease that I'm predisposed to? I also don't feel like that is helpful, especially as Christians. Like, how are we supposed to live in hope and faith and trust in God if we're just like seeking out these things that we can't change, right?
Yeah.
And people would say, well, you can be preemptive with your lifestyle around these things, but you can be preemptive without knowing that too.
Mm.
Like
Mm.
you can take care of yourself without knowing that. So that's why I like HTMA is it's like, hey, these are things you can address.
Mhm.
Most of them can be relatively as low cost as you want them to be. I mean, they can be as simple as emphasizing a food that's rich in that mineral, or they can be, as complex as like, I want to hit this hard and I'm going to take this supplement that's really high in potassium or whatever it is. So sorry to go on a rabbit trail, but I wanted to just kind of add to that.
Yeah. No, that's really helpful. And I think that is a good practical question for asking yourself, what am I going to do with this information? And for me, I said, if you're going to make sure that I eliminate XYZ foods from my diet, I'm going to say no to this whole thing because I know I'm not going to do that. Or, like I need to know why because I didn't really, I've been down that road. And so it was unhealthy for me more so. There are foods that I know immediately make me feel bad. So it's like, oh, okay, great. Peanuts. I don't feel good with peanuts. I don't feel good with the green peppers. It's really random stuff. But if it's foods, I'm like, it doesn't immediately make me feel bad. I don't have that lived experience. It's hard to trust that and to still cut those things out. So being able to see that test in black and white and to see, oh yeah, I need potassium or I need this. And I think it's really helpful to what you said too, of like you can take care of yourself without knowing what you're predisposed to or not. Um, I think that there is so much noise and there's so much health information that we forget about the basics and we forget about the foundations of how to actually take care of ourselves. So, it might sound really basic and silly, but to be able to say things like, what are the nutritional basics? Oh, how much sleep should we be getting? And, that's why we focus in on tuning into our body so that we can feel those things as we go, and the effects of doing or not doing, getting enough sleep or whatnot, stress. So Megan, feel free to comment on that as well. And also, if there's a Christian woman considering, functional lab testing, and would you give them some other kind of advice, like whether it's HTMA or some other kind of functional lab test? Specifically, it's probably someone who is interested in their health and who's taken a lot of tests already.
Yeah, I think this is such a good point and it kind of comes back to that not becoming hypervigilant, right? And really being honest and checking in with yourself of, is this next test going to be helpful for me, or is it going to maybe give me this sense of pseudo control. I think,
Mm.
you know, one verse that in this season for me has just kept coming back up is Proverbs 16, verse 9, which is, I make plans, but try to hold them loosely, knowing he directs my steps, right? So we are the stewards. Our role is to care for and honor our health. But I always remind my clients that God is our ultimate provider of health, life, and all things good. He is our ultimate healer. And also, like, perfect health isn't meant to be achieved in this life, perfect health in quotes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Until like heaven and earth are restored. Like we just live in this reality that we can heal, right? When God is allowing healing in our bodies, but also not everybody is promised healing in this life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've had friends and family go through very serious health things, right? And maybe heaven is their ultimate healing, right? And so again, just focusing on, as Christians, I think it's a very important piece of the conversation that living with a heart and spirit of surrender is not, usually does not look like continuing to seek and do the next thing. It's finding a place where we can rest in God's grace. Sometimes for, especially for healing, that can look like slowing down and actually doing less, right? Coming back to these foundations, and just really tuning into this role to honor and care for ourselves, to nurture ourselves while keeping God on the throne of our lives. And kind of along with that, you know, I'm a huge proponent of HTMA, but you know, and honestly, when I was first trying it out, I was more amped to give like loved ones in my life just kind of their written results and recommendations. And I've really learned that we need to talk through this. We need to like find out how this can be implemented in your life without adding stress and overwhelm, because the data alone often does add stress and overwhelm.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's just kind of a point of caution. But you know, our goal with finding more data is to validate your symptoms, to help you to find answers so that you can better nurture, nourish, and replenish yourself, to bring your systems in your body back into balance, right? Because we can do that pretty well with foundations. Sometimes we need therapeutic level supplementation, especially if you're wanting to promote that healing faster. You know, I work with a company where I can make like customized supplements all in one. Those are a little pricier, not going to be in the budget for everyone, but it's cool to have that option. But
Mm-hmm.
the last thing I really want Christians to hear specifically, especially, is that you are not a problem to be solved. Your brokenness has already been redeemed in Christ, and you are an intentionally made whole person that God created, and you get to take care of yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
It really actually is such a gift to be able to nurture and care for our health. And that is not the message we hear from culture. We hear of it as a burden, as should and expectations and shame ridden and judgment ridden. But I would just encourage you to really start to uproot some of those things in your life if you're experiencing that, and just try to see that as a gift and focus on the truths of who you are in Christ.
Yes. Beautiful. I
Yeah.
mean, really, yes, that the fact that you're not a problem to be solved, and for the person who is continually optimizing and biohacking and seeking and seeking and seeking, it's like, no, God, Jesus tells us to seek and we will find, you know, like there is an end and it is him. And we don't have to live this life of discontent, always trying to be free from headaches or be free from whatever it is. It's like, okay, we can do that. We have permission to, but like you said, we are already made spiritually whole. And so to be able to rest in that first, and then to be able to freely explore some options with some curiosity and open hands and lightheartedness. Um, yeah, I think that's a good sweet spot. Aubrey, what would you say to that Christian woman considering further functional lab testing?
Oh goodness. Yeah. I would say go back to that question of like, what before you do, like, what am I realistically able to do right now financially, also just spiritually, mentally, physically, like what am I actually able to implement right now? I don't do, like, my model is I do not do an HTMA until I've had an initial assessment and we've like worked on some stuff, and I really want to see like, hey, again, like what Megan said, like I want to find out what is needed here. Like, is an HTMA needed? Is that even going to be, or any functional test, are they even going to implement the results that they implement the protocol or the thing or whatever the recommendations are? So ask yourself, like, what's the information I'm going to get out of this? Is it what I need? Is it going to draw me closer to God and an attitude of gratitude? Did not want to mean to rhyme there about my body and about my life. Or is it going to drive a wedge? And that's going to be different for every single person. So I think that just going back to that question, and if it's like, yeah, I think that this is going to help me. I think I'm really experiencing some symptoms and I'm not able to like let it go. And I need to know something that I can do. And, you know, I want to get some answers and some validation, then yes, go for it.
Yeah. And then I wanted to bring up to you when I asked y'all, like, is there any certain scripture that you'd like to bring up? I know Megan brought up Proverbs 16:9, and you had marked down Mark 8:35 through 36. Are you okay if I read that?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So it says, "For whosoever will save his life shall lose it, but whosoever shall lose his life for my sake and the gospel's, the same shall save it. For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his soul?" So tell us why you put that down for this conversation.
So that was more on the cautionary side, but I think I put that down because ultimately, like, all of this stuff is great and it's a gift to be able to explore it. But ultimately, having that peace in Christ and knowing that your salvation and your status as a daughter or son is secure is so powerful for our health, for our entire life, right? Like, it is way more powerful than spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on all the latest health trends and tests. And you can certainly, in my opinion, like, lose your soul trying to find life that way. And that's why I love these functional tests, like especially this one. I think it's great, but I am so conscious of the responsibility to do it in a way that points to the truth of the gospel, that he is the most important, and finding your rest in him is going to impact your life far more than any of these tests are. So I think that even listening to your last week's podcast with Caroline Dooner, talking about how just like her life before and after, and just that peace that she has that stays with her, and the realization that this life is not all there is. There is a coming life, right, where we are completely healed, where we're going to be there for eternity. And we're going to have access to the river of life and the tree of life. And like, we don't need all this. And so it just takes that pressure off of like, I don't have to figure it all out. But like, if God's given me the grace to, to do this, and it's a way I've been praying, and there's, maybe an answer of how I can feel better and steward the gifts he's given me better, then this is a great option too. So just perspective, I guess.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Well, thank you both for sharing the gospel. I mean, that's the hope for every one of these episodes, is to be able to share the good news. And keep that the main thing, because we can get so lost in the weeds of wellness culture and diet culture. And as Christians, how can we stay rooted in the good news, in that he has already given us life and we don't have to continue seeking it in the world? And so being able to rest in that is, it helps to scatter a lot of stress. So yeah, thank you both for sharing your expertise, your experience, your testimony too, of just knowing Jesus. So just fun question for you both. Megan, how are you discovering joyful health right now?
Yeah, I think that's a good question for me to like reflect on too. One fun thing that I did this fall that a friend of mine inspired me to do is to create a fall bucket list of favorite seasonal recipes. So, my friend Sally, she's a teacher and is just like so artistic, and everything she makes is just the most beautiful thing ever. But mine's just a note on my phone. This is working for me.
Mhm.
But hers inspired me to make a little fall recipe bucket list. And so just have been enjoying cooking my way through that, but like also with the pressure off that it's already, right now when we're recording, it's October 31st, and I might not make it through the whole bucket list, and that's okay. But yeah, that's so just enjoying some delicious seasonal cooking. I've actually started doing acupuncture lately, which has been really grounding and helpful for me. In my healing journey, I did some pretty well, I don't know if intense is the right word, but I did EMDR therapy, which if you've ever been through that therapy, it's a little more intense type of therapy, which required a lot of slowing down. And so acupuncture has just been a really great continuation of that to
Mm.
help my body just continue to process and release stress. And then along with that, just enjoying gentle movement, enjoying walking around my neighborhood and looking at the beautiful fall colors. I live in Michigan, so we're kind of at the peak right now, maybe a little past it, and then just lots of worship music and just time connecting with God, whatever that looks like in my day.
Yeah, I love that. Sounds so restful. Okay, to follow up on that, what's one of the fall recipes that you're like, oh, I'm gonna make this every year?
Ooh, every year. Definitely probably like chili. Sweet potato shepherd's pie is one that I had found from Cooking Matters back when I worked for that program. That's a fun one. But the every year one is probably one I have not made yet, which is my mom's goulash recipe, or actually it was her mom's recipe, and it is not what you would think of as traditional goulash. It's basically ground beef, rice, green olives, cream cheese, and I think tomatoes. But it is like so it just brings me back. It's just one of those nostalgic foods. Like I remember when I moved away to grad school and my mom came to visit for the first time and I was a little homesick and she cooked me that and I was like, this bowl of goulash feels like I'm home right now. And
Oh,
so I need to cook that one soon. I'm really excited to enjoy that.
sweet. Yeah, when you say traditional goulash, I'm like, I don't actually know what that is.
I don't think it usually has green olives or maybe not cream cheese, but hey, it's yummy.
Great. Yeah, I'm willing to try it. Well, thank you for sharing. It sounds like you've had a very restful, intentional fall of savoring the season. Aubrey, how about you? How are you enjoying Joyful Health right now?
Yeah, that's funny. I was talking to my husband the other day about like, oh, I'm just craving like something indulgent. Like like and I realized what I was craving was just like joy because I didn't um anyways, we're just in a busy season. So what we're doing, what I know like sets me up for like I like to call it a joy bomb is honestly just getting up in the morning. It's so boring. Just getting up in the morning and doing my strength training. It's so like it just I don't even know why. I don't know why I don't have anything specific I'm training for, but I just love it and it makes me feel so good. So
Mm,
I've been getting up and doing that and my husband gets up with me still, which is also just the best because it's a social hour sort of. He doesn't really talk. I talk a lot. Um and
social hour for you.
that's yes. And then after that, I've been doing, I kind of fell into this slump of like, I don't know what to read in the Bible. So I just like I was reading like bits, but not, it wasn't really like satisfying me. And so I was like, well, I just need to develop a plan. So I started doing like, I'm trying to do like 5 Psalms a day and make my
Mm,
way through the Psalms in a month. And then the proverb of the day. So just like, whatever day of, like if I miss a day, I just go to the day of the month proverb and then
mhm,
work my way through the epistles. So it's kind of um like right now I'm on Colossians. I just started Colossians. And
mhm.
that's been really wonderful. I've never really intentionally read through the Psalms. And even just like praying those out loud. Yeah, that's been awesome. So that's my joyful health habits right now. We're always trying to cook indulgently. I love that word right now, but like we we love fall cooking. I use my style of cooking is just butter, more butter, some bacon. Like
Mhm.
I don't know. Paula Deen, I don't know.
I mean, when it's cold outside, you're like, I want
Yeah.
warmth and like a lot of
Stew.
food
Lots of stew right
that
now.
sticks with you.
Yeah. Stick to your bones. Yeah. So that's always going on. I joke that I can like whip up whatever. If there's just things around and I don't want to go out to eat, I can just like make a random meal. But my husband is actually the one who like will sit there in the kitchen after he's watched a chef on YouTube and make the most like fancy thing in the world. So I get to benefit from that as well. So yeah.
Yeah. Sounds great. Well, okay. Thank you for sharing that. I think hopefully that gives people ideas too if they're like, what do you mean joyful health? And so that health does not have to be a chore. It does not have to be like, oh, a healthy salad, which is what my kids think about salad right now. It's like, no, it's whatever brings you joy. And that is where health can never flow. So think of some things, listener, that bring you joy and just know that it's probably going to be good for you because the joy of the Lord is our strength. And so those two things are very much related. Okay. Finally, if someone wants to work with either one of you with HTMA testing or maybe something else that you are getting into one-on-one, then how can they do that? Megan, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so all my details are on my website. My most popular offer currently is my HTMA test package that includes a comprehensive assessment of your symptoms, health history with me, and then we will do a live 30 to 45-minute video call to discuss your results. As I mentioned, is just so beneficial to just do that little extra and just really takes the stress and overwhelm then from you just getting written results. Um, so, and then we'll come up with a healing protocol together, right? So that might be really focusing on the foundation, that might be adding in some specific intentions with nutrition, maybe adding in some supplements, or maybe you're ready to deep dive into the therapeutic level of supplements. It really depends on your symptoms, your results, and what's in your capacity and budget, kind of like what we've already talked to. But yeah, all that info is on my website to book. Would love for you to check that out. I'm sure Kasey will link that in the show notes. We didn't really spend much time talking about this today. I think partially because it's not usually a starting point, but I have started to offer a BiomeFX gut microbiome test that was a helpful tool for me the past year in my health journey. Again, it might not be necessary or needed for everyone, but I do like this test and I'm starting to offer it also because it not only looks at your gut microbiome, which in and of itself is fascinating, but again, we don't always need that data. But it also can look at like your histamine levels, estrogen recycling, which can really impact if there's hormonal imbalances going on. So that is something I'm offering to more info is on my website with that. But yeah, I do think if you're interested in functional lab testing, and especially if you're open to having a grace-rooted approach with that, I would love to work with you. And I forgot to mention this to Kasey, but I did come out with a free fall recipe ebook that we can link for you in the show notes as well for some, if you need some recipe inspo, that's a free resource. And then lastly, I do have my small group program that I know Kasey mentioned in the beginning. And it's a smaller group of women. We've had like 5 to 8 women consistently in the group the past year, but it's really an intimate group of women journeying together to reject diet culture while honoring and caring for their health holistically. And I just can't believe what God's been doing in the group. And so if you feel like you need a virtual community space to just kind of, you know, work on intuitive eating, break free from, again, this kind of shame-based narrative that we find so prevalent around health and culture, that might be the place for you. But yeah, more info with that on my website too.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yes, and I will put all the links there. And thank you for that fall recipe ebook as well. That's really helpful just to get some fresh ideas for cooking and restore the joy there. Okay, Aubrey, how about you?
Yeah, I don't have a lot to share because I'm probably not going to be accepting very many clients for the future, but I would love to just connect with you. So I love talking to people. You can message me on my Instagram, Aubrey Golbek, or you can shoot me an email. It's just aubreygolbek@gmail.com. If you are in the Tulsa area, I am taking like a very small amount of clients. Or I would love to refer you, or if you really want that in-person counseling and you're in Tulsa, and it's movementcube.com. It's actually out of my husband's chiropractic office. And then I'll put the exact link to my nutrition counseling page there too. But would love to hear from you guys. Would love to pray for you, answer any questions, or just connect.
Cool. Thank you. Okay, well, on that note, Aubrey, could you pray for all of us as we conclude?
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Father God, I just thank you so much for Kasey and for Megan, and for this podcast and everybody listening. Thank you that we're able to just even have the opportunity to have these conversations and just hopefully encourage one another towards you, towards a deeper relationship with you, towards a greater knowledge of you, Lord. And I pray that you would use this podcast to point people to places that next steps they need to take that will just bring them closer to you and bring them deeper into your joy. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. And friends, until next time, may you rest in his grace and follow the joy.